calm down before you stress up the groove. The energy a little different when the blessings accrue. Hey, who you talking to? Just know I ain't no regular fool. Could be anything in the world, but I can never be you because I stand tall like I'm on my tiptoes, baby. You think a little too small. I got big goals, baby. Hey, where the money at? Look, I just need the info. Pronto, I go and get it and split it with my kinfolk daily. And I'm the type of that might change my number on you. Yeah, that's how you react when people took a slumber.
For endurance athletes, getting the right diet can make the difference between success and failure.
I know it make you wonder, don't you?
Many are now choosing to adopt a plant-based regime, and they are witnessing some remarkable results.
At the top, I found some relief. I finally got some peace.
Sports nutritionist TJ Waterfall advises elite athletes on how to improve their performance by making changes to their diets.
I've had the honour and privilege to work with a whole range of elite plant-based athletes, ranging in disciplines from Premier League footballers, professional rugby players, several Team GB Olympians, and of course lots of endurance-based athletes too. Plant-based diets can be extremely effective for endurance-based sports. They can provide an abundance of carbohydrates, which is very important. They can provide plenty of protein, plenty of healthy fats, so they're providing all of the essential macronutrients. But importantly, plant-based diets can provide an abundance of antioxidants and countless other beneficial plant compounds which have been proven time and again to improve both performance and recovery. Circulation can be improved, so studies have shown that blood rheology, which is a measure of how fluid the blood is, can be improved within just 6 weeks of adopting a plant-based diet. And your blood rheology is very closely linked with performance as well.
Today I'ma wake up a new man, driving a new road, develop a new plan.
Ireland's Ger Prendergast has completed multiple Ironman triathlons. In 2017 he won the notoriously tough UK Deca Ironman, completing 10 full Ironman distances in 10 days.
What you need, I'm unchained, unfazed and unwilling.
I have actually 6 brothers and 6 sisters, so I come from a big family as well. And we are all into sport, we all played kinds of sports, and my dad actually set up the first ever gym in Ballymun. That was in the probably early to mid 80s. And yeah, so it initially started as a boxing gym for us lads. Because obviously Ballymun, it's fairly rough, I suppose, like most kind of big towns in big cities has its rough areas. So I think my dad's thinking was just for us to be able to look after ourselves. So all my brothers were really good boxers. The older guys were all Ireland champions, but I lost my sight when I was 7 years old, my left eye, so I wasn't able to compete like my brothers, but I was able to train and do light sparring and stuff like that. But I really loved the training and stuff.
Unable to box competitively, Ger had a short but successful career as a footballer. He then went on to represent his country in the sport of futsal, a fast-paced indoor soccer game. When a lack of funding ended Ger's futsal career, he turned his attention to running. And a decision to try out a plant-based diet proved to be life-changing.
I knew it was kind of contradictory to be still doing weights and still eating meat and to bulk up for running. I said I'd give it a go, but it worked instantly. It really worked instantly for me. I felt lighter, I felt I had more energy, I just felt fantastic doing it. I was able to go from running, I think I mentioned earlier, I ran a 5k that almost killed me. Like in training runs then I was nearly able to do half marathons, like no problem, it was just, I felt fantastic. So I knew it was for me, So from there on in, I never looked back.
I started running marathons, I think it was in 2002, sounds like an awful long time ago, just because I wanted a challenge, I suppose, and I found that I was quite good at those longer distances, and I did enjoy it, and so I was running marathons for quite a few years, and then I sort of came to a point where I thought, well, you know, I can try and go faster, or I can try and go further. And this was also coupled with some kind of search for meaning of life after my father passed away in 2010. And so I think all things considered, I decided to go into ultramarathons. And I did that in 2011, so it's 10 years ago, I ran my first ultramarathon, and that was 50 kilometers, 50 kilometers sort of easy trail, and that went really well. And then I did 50 miles, and then I did 100 kilometers, and then I did the Marathon des Sables, and then it went on from there with some longer distances after that, but also a lot of stage races. I've always been interested in nutrition, so I think it's always been important for me to look at that aspect of performance and how you can leverage your nutrition, you know, for recovery and for maximizing your training and performing races. So I would say, yeah, it's been very important. And in that sense, I guess I've tried to have a relatively sort of clean diet, even though I haven't always been plant-based.
So here we are, coming up with some of the animals that I run for and want to hopefully help others like them.
For some, sporting success comes secondary to other issues and is just a means to an end. Fiona Oakes runs an animal sanctuary in the UK. As a lifelong vegan, her primary goal is to raise awareness of animal welfare issues and the role that veganism plays in reducing the suffering of animals.
I run actually to promote veganism. I wanted a platform from which to speak out for the animals. Back in the early noughties, nobody had literally heard of veganism, and if they had, it was negative input rather than positive. And I just wanted to say, look, I've been vegan since I was 6 years old, I'm healthy, I'm not deficient in anything. How do I do that? And this is before social media. You didn't have an opportunity to just put something on Google or YouTube. So I wanted to do something positive, proactive, peaceful. Always been relatively good at sport, not best positioned to do running, I have to say, because I've got a very bad injury, which I was told I was never walk properly again, let alone run. But at the time, women's sport was pretty low. Was pretty low key, and the only thing that was garnering any real attention was marathon running because of Paula Radcliffe and the success she was having. So the idea was, if I could just compete in and hopefully complete a marathon, that's got to be definitive proof that as a vegan, as a long-term vegan, you can pretty much do anything. But they live quite happily. Louis, his next racehorse. I can't go round and literally engage with everyone and tell them, hey, veganism's great, you can do really well on a vegan diet. So it was literally, I started the Vegan Runner Club back in 2004 to literally be on the start line of the London Marathon with the elite ladies setting off 45 minutes ahead of the main field as a showcase. It's literally a billboard, back and front, vegan, so people at least associated the word with elite sport. That's all I started running to do. That's all I've ever wanted to do with my running. Go on, Connie, in you go. I'm going to put you in. Come on. Come on. Come on, Connie. I've run the fast marathons on the road. I've won races, broke course records. And then one of my friends, he said, why don't you do the Marathon des Sables? That's the toughest foot race on the planet, and it kind of ticked all the boxes. And it sounded like a jolly good idea the year before I did it. But as it loomed up to me, I'm kind of thinking, this is a bit of a strange event as I looked more closely into it. And I thought, come on, Fiona, you've run 2:38 in a marathon, you can do this. It's probably actually been one of the most life-enhancing experiences ever for me. Not in terms of the running, but in terms of the running, but in terms of the lessons, the life lessons it taught me. For anybody who doesn't know, it's a week-long multi-stage race, and roughly speaking, most stages are just under a marathon distance, you know, there and thereabouts, and there's one double marathon and beyond. You have to carry your own supplies for the whole week, so it's imperative that you have as small a backpack as you can possibly have. But generally speaking, you've got about 7 or 8 kilos on your back at your lightest weight. You set off at the beginning of the week, and if you don't have it on day 1, you're not going to have it on day 3. You're carrying everything for that whole week. So it's difficult to do it as an ethical vegan. There weren't the food products available, so I was ill-equipped. But actually, it was just the most amazing experience. Takes you to some extraordinarily dark places and teaches you how to navigate your way out of them.
For Andrew Bradley, mountaineering had been a lifelong passion. But a tragic incident in the Himalayas made him reconsider his views on the sport and ultimately played a part in his attitude to health and diet.
When you sort of progress through mountaineering, you can start off on smaller hills and then you can go alpine, and we were doing a lot of 4,000 meter climbs, and then progress then to committing to a climb on a small expedition in the Himalayas on a mountain called Amadablam, which is quite close to Everest. But is different to Everest in a way that it's a technical climb. It's a small mountain. It's a mountaineer's mountain. It's more like the Matterhorn, but a lot bigger. So it's 6,800 meters over of ascent. We'd been to Camp 2, over 6,000 meters. We were back down to Camp 1, and we decided that we were going to go back just to refresh ourselves. But one of our team was going for the summit. He decided to go for a summit that day. So he stayed at Camp 2 and went for his summit bid, and we retreated down to Camp 1, and we were going to set off the next day. And during that time, in the middle of the night, I think it was 5 o'clock in the morning, there was an earthquake. It turned out that the avalanche that had happened high up, there's a hanging glacier on Amadablam, and it had released a lot of ice onto our two guys that were over, and they were at about 6,200 meters when the ice released and hit them both. It knocked them 300 meters down, and one of them woke up literally hanging over a precipice just by his rope. His rucksack had been ripped off his back.
Later that day, word came through that the other team member had tragically lost his life.
When I got home, it was obviously very upsetting for my wife while I was away until I got home and, my family. But then, when I got home, my wife just turned to me and she said, "Why don't you buy a bike and just do something a little safer?" So that's exactly what I did. Then with the commitment then to cycling, I found this event, and it was hailed as the hardest amateur cycle race in the world, called the Horseshoe Alps, which is a race from Nice to Geneva. At that year it was a race from Nice to Geneva with 23,000 meters of climbing, and it was Alpe d'Huez, and it was all these sort of iconic things that I'd seen in the Tour de France, but I'd never imagined or even been there. My view of going to the mountains was to go climb the Matterhorn or something, not to cycle up it. I didn't even realise it was a thing. So a friend here who cycles a lot, I suggested that we look at doing the Horseshoe Alps as an event. And he said, "Great, it's tough, but we'll give it a go." And And I said, but to make it more fun, we'll cycle from home to Nice first. Meanwhile, we got a third team member involved, so there was now 3 of us with a commitment to do it. Most of the sort of the chat with cyclists that I know around this area were sort of saying, no, I don't think this can be done, that you won't be able to recover in time, that you'll put your body under too much stress. It was a 10-day cycle through France. It was then looking, okay, well, how can I best do this? How can I function at my best? Because it's not like mountaineering. This is a completely different sport that I've never engaged in before. And a lot of the evidence seemed to be sort of, it kept anecdotally sort of pointing towards a very carbohydrate-driven fueling system, which then led to the realization that eating plants was the obvious way to try and fuel for this. So myself and my wife were vegetarian then from December onwards for 2 months, and then we said, okay, well, let's just make the full leap and go fully plant-based for that. And so I suppose for the health benefits and the training regime, and basically to try and make myself a human experiment to see at 50 years old if you could radically change your diet, change your training regime and fuel to make that happen and to achieve the goal.
For Andrew's partner, adopting a plant-based diet went counter to her upbringing in rural Ireland.
I grew up on a dairy farm in the 70s and 80s. So farming was on, I'd say, a much smaller scale. The animals were well cared for, grass-fed, but as a child as well, you're very aware of where your food comes from. You're aware milk doesn't come from a carton. You know where the meat comes from on your plate, because some cattle are reared for beef. So I think when I moved on to initially deciding to become vegetarian, and I'd made that decision because Andrew was training quite a lot for mountaineering expeditions and was eating a heavy protein meat-based diet, and I just wanted to change. So we decided to, and he agreed, we'd both eat vegetarian dishes. And at that time, a lot of documentaries began to come out about plant-based diets and the benefits of plant-based diets. And it wasn't until I watched them, because when you're growing up on a farm, you're not taken to the abattoirs, or while animals are well cared for on your farm, you don't see the end of life for them. While initially I would have thought maybe leading more to a vegan diet, moving away even from vegetarian diet, was for health reasons. It quickly, for me, shifted for animal welfare and just moving away from the cruelty of that side.
Definitely started as sports and performance, but definitely a big fan of trying to help the environment and just for your own self and animal welfare and all. It's a big thing, and you really get invested in it. You really, the more you read up about it, like the more you want to try and help that side of things as well. Like there's lots of documentaries on Netflix that people would have heard about, like What the Health, and obviously the new one, Game Changer and stuff. But there's loads of those kind of documentaries that I was looking at the time, and it's the fact that veganism can help all that things is definitely a bonus on top of the whole sports performance.
I decided to move to a plant-based diet in early 2018. The reason I did that was because I was a bit overworked. I had been racing hard for a few years. I'd been working hard in parallel. I was going through some personal problems, and it all sort of resulted in me hitting the wall in a way. And so I got very, very fatigued, and no medics could help me. Like my GP was like, because you can't just give someone a medication and sort it out. It's a very complex problem. And so I thought, well, I have to help myself. So I started to do research on health and diet. I thought I knew a lot already, but there were things I didn't know. So I read things like the China study and how not to die, and I watched documentaries, and I listened to podcasts, and then I thought, well, the only way out of this is to adopt a plant-based diet. And so I did it in the beginning of 2018. So it was predominantly for health reasons. When I cut out animal products from my diet, I noticed some big changes straight away, actually, which I maybe hadn't expected. But one of them was that my sinuses opened up, and so I didn't even realize that they had been maybe a bit blocked, but I stopped snoring. So that was interesting. And as a result, I guess I think I improved my sleep quality. I felt like I got more energy throughout the day, more like even energy, and that it became easier to train after eating, so I didn't have to wait very long. I could basically eat and then go for a run, which hadn't been possible before. So I think that was like I guess a general feeling of more well-being, and then my blood work improved as well. So for example, my cholesterol dropped massively. There were a lot of benefits, I think.
For multi-day endurance events, there are well-documented sports nutrition strategies, and those certainly still apply to vegan athletes as well. So it's simple things like carbohydrate loading in the days and hours before a key event, ensuring adequate hydration and electrolyte balance during the event as well. Depending on the length of the event, if it's over 90 minutes, then carbohydrate intake during the race can be beneficial. The recommended amount is between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour of endurance exercise. Or even for longer events lasting 3 hours or more, even up to 90 grams of carbohydrates, if they're coming from mixed carbohydrate sources per hour, can be beneficial.
Truthfully, I give it very little thought in terms of the fact that I probably focus on different things to most athletes. I don't work to any food strategy whatsoever other than the very, very basics in terms of I do endurance events, I do a lot of training. I'm a high distance training runner. I can't get by on a few miles. For my mental state, I feel that I probably need between 80 and 100 miles a week, which my body functions very well on. But carbohydrates, no foods are off the agenda for me. As long as it's vegan, I'm happy with it. If I think I need something more in my diet, if I feel that I'm a little bit tired or I need to up the calories, then I will do. But other than that, no, I don't. I don't have any fancy gadgets in my life whatsoever. I don't run with Strava or Garmin or heart rate monitors or pulse rate monitors. I can judge my pace to the second of what I'm running because I've learned to work it out in here and relate it to what my body's telling me.
I'd be unwise to get in. And there wouldn't be much swimming done. You're probably getting dragged out by some lifesavers or something. Very strong. It's just
I wanted to do something else as well, like the running wasn't enough. I'd seen these things called triathlons where you swim, bike and run. So the problem at that time was that I couldn't swim. So there's the duathlon, which is a run, bike and run. So I'd done a couple of them for probably a year or so. But in the back of my mind there was always the triathlon, you know, it was always this pinnacle, something very exciting about being able to do 3 different sports in one. So I signed up for my first triathlon with the intention of doing some lessons, and yeah, that just never materialised. So the day was upon me in no time, and I just said I'd go over and have a go anyway, because it was only a 600 metre swim. I think a sprint is usually 750, but for some reason this was 600 metres. So I said I'd try to do some kind of breaststroke through it, and managed to do so with lungs full of water I was taking on. But did manage to get out in last place as well. Out of probably 200 people, I was last place in the swim, and that'll tell you everything. But then when I got on the bike, I was just passing people like in bunches, and then more so again on the run. And I finished, I think, just over an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. So I knew if I, really got into the swimming, if I improved my swimming and done a few lessons, that I'd be fairly, competitive.
I'm sorry, baby, I don't mean to be rude. Yeah, I'm just a little different from all these dudes. Okay, they riding waves, me, I'm up on a cruise. Yeah, you feel like me, then you got nothing to prove. I see him trying to do what I do. Yeah, even Mick Jagger couldn't move like a moon. Yeah, you think how it look, I'm up on the moon. Yeah, got fresh to death and it came out of the tomb. That's cause I got a different type of gratitude. Don't be sour, got my power from the Beatitudes. And we did it the long way, check out the latitude. I'm unapologetic, you fly, don't wonder why, that's just my attitude. Yeah, that's right, yeah, that's just my attitude.
So 2015 was my first Ironman in Wales. Obviously had to pick the hardest one to do, of course. And then done really well in that, had a good time. And want to do more and more. Actually, what happened was I lost a family member to, through suicide, mental health issues. So what I did was targeted the decade, which was 10 Ironmans in 10 days, as a way of raising awareness and some funds for Mental Health Ireland. But I knew I still needed to build up my kind of endurance, my stamina, and my mental strength as well to be able to tackle such a beast of an event. So there was an event in Westmeath here, Lilliput Adventure Centre called Celtic Warrior, and it's the only one in Ireland where you, like a double Ironman, one a day over 2 days. So basically, if you're not sure what an Ironman is, it's 3.8k swim, 180k bike and a 42k marathon. So I'd done two in 2 days, and the first day went really well. I think there was 20 of us signed up to do it. 20 odd people signed up to do it. And then for the second day, the weather was just absolutely outrageous. It was biblical, and 2 of us got out of bed to tackle the second day. We got in, done the swim. It was quite choppy, obviously in the lake, quite cold. Got through it fairly well, and the other guy got through it as well, but he decided to pull out then. But that actually gave me such a boost then, because I knew, I was, after building up a fairly good amount of strength physically and mentally, and it gave me great confidence then to go on, finish that event, and then tackle the Deca UK, because I knew if I didn't finish the 2 in 2 days, I wasn't allowing myself to go and tackle the Deca.
For some plant-based athletes, a common question is, how can you get sufficient protein from your diet?
Most people massively overestimate how much protein they need, and they significantly underestimate how much protein is in whole plant foods like pulses, grains, and even vegetables. So if you're eating sufficient calories, and if you're eating a balanced and varied diet, you'll be getting plenty of protein containing all of the essential amino acids without even making a conscious effort.
The life I've cut out of me. Somebody did that for me. I can't think of anything worse. I don't know if it's because I've been, my body's adapted to it, but no, I honestly don't take, I might have 45 products, soya and stuff like that, but I don't take any actual supplements, no. I don't take any protein supplements, I don't take anything, literally what you see is what you get.
I would perhaps have a plant-based vegan porridge for breakfast. And then for the actual running, I mean, I always just take a lot of carbohydrates, and so by default that means it's not meat products, you know, so it's more like dried fruit and jelly, sweets and things like that. And for recovery, like a plant-based shake, like vegan protein shake, and then again like freeze-dried meal for dinner. So that's very uncomplicated to do on a plant-based diet. But I do get that question a lot, you know, oh, how can you fuel for an ultramarathon if you don't eat meat? And it's like, well, it's not complicated at all, you know.
If I'm doing a big ride or if I know it's going to be a very hard, fast ride, I can really step up the sugars and the carbohydrates to fuel for that. And then conversely, at the end of that, I can increase the protein intake just to repair the muscle fibers. But it's all, you know, there's plenty of good plant-based options for protein out there now, mainly from whole foods. You don't have to use vast amount of supplements to do it. You can do it through normal food. So that's what I sort of, the way I sort of work it, and it just so far so good, yeah.
October 2017, and Ger Prendergast puts his plant-based diet to the ultimate test. The UK DECA Ironman.
For the DECA, so obviously being plant-based, it actually suits it really well, like, because the food I eat I eat lots of obviously fruit and veg and stuff, but I eat them in most of the time in smoothie format. So the good thing about that is, you know, you're not eating solid food, so you're saving a lot of energy. You know, during the DECA I made something very similar to this. You know, like 40 to 50 grams of cashew nut, small handful plant protein. This is gold standard one. Blend of flax seeds and chia seeds. So an avocado will be high in fats. Maybe 3 or 4 dates. Frozen strawberries. They taste really nice in the tin. We hit number 5. There you go. Nice and thick, just the way I like it. It's really nice. Before the bike, I would actually have some porridge at the DECA, and I'd have probably nuts and fruit and that, banana and walnuts, some maple syrup and things like that, just to keep it sweet. So after, when I finished every day, I would have something like a curry, a plant-based curry, and that would probably be with chickpeas, so high in protein. And I'd eat a lot of avocados as well for lots of fats as well, because fats is like you know, twice the amount of energy in a fat than you have in a carbohydrate. So I was trying to fuel with a lot of fats. That's where the avocados come in. My goal was to get a lot of those in throughout the day as well, and kind of a bit more protein there. Then after I finished each event, and the protein I would get would be from chickpeas, tofu, lots of lentils, things like that. Yeah, so those kind of things pretty much got me through the whole 10 days of the DECA Ironman.
After a grueling 10 days, a convincing victory for the Irishman, and further evidence of the power of plant-based food. For Andrew Bradley, the change to a vegan diet played its part in a successful crossing of the Alps.
The race across the Alps was hugely challenging because I'd never cycled over those sort of mountains before, because we don't have them here. So you can be 2 hours on a 10% climb, really to the pin of your collar, and you're digging deep into your reserves and your soul at that time, because you start to question why you've even set off in the first place. But that's the wonderful thing with those experiences. You grow and you become better and stronger for it.
About that.
For Fiona Oakes, there was to be no return to the Sahara Desert in 2020. But, in true spirit, she found a way to complete the 250-kilometre run, albeit in the wilds of the Essex countryside.
midnight and I'm just prepared to go out and do the long stage of my virtual version of the Marathon des Sables. I'm not going to do it all in one go, as the rules do permit. I'm going to get to 50k and then I'm going to have to stop because I think it's going to be about time for me to start the animal jobs by then. I reckon it's going to take me about 5.5 hours to get there, to get the first bit of the distance done, 50k. So then I need to stop, regroup, do the animals, and then go back out and do the last 32k. I think it's kind of sensible to do it that way around because in these times of like no emergency services or very little, you don't want to put yourself in risk. You don't want to compromise your own immune system by doing too much. So I'm playing it easy. As you can see, it's dark outside, so I've got my head torch with me.
When MDS got cancelled last year, I actually ran the whole event with my backpack here to kind of get it out of my system. You know, you've been focusing, as with, if you're focusing hard on any race, you are heavily invested in it physically and mentally, and you're thinking, you know, on that week at the beginning of April I will be in the desert, and that'll be probably in September, October you'll start building up to that the previous year. So I kind of needed to remove that from my system and cleanse it in my system and think, well, I've done it, I've done the 156 miles. I couldn't sadly do it in the Sahara Desert, but I have done it, and now I can move on from that. So it's kind of release. But now, yeah, they are just races. They are not, you know, it's not the beginning and end of life. It is important, obviously it plays a big part in your life, but there are more important things.
With recent events highlighting the benefits of a healthy immune system, many are now making the switch to a plant-based diet.
I would say if you're new to plant-based eating, then for most people starting off gradually is a good idea. So some people make that switch overnight and are absolutely fine with it, so if that's you, then great. But for others, then making the change to a plant-based diet can provide much more fibre than what they're used to, especially if their diet wasn't particularly great to begin with. And that sudden increase in fibre can cause some digestive issues like gas and bloating. And I should say that a high fibre intake is incredibly healthy. It supports the healthy bacteria in your gut, and having a healthy gut microbiome influences almost every other system in your body, and it's strongly linked with performance too.
Have a game plan. So work out what it is that in your own diet that you currently eat, how you're going to replace it, how you're going to substitute it. Think about the reasons that you are looking towards veganism, and do it sensibly. Some people just say, oh, I just went vegan overnight like that, gradually, and you know, it's different for everyone. But go in with, don't go in with like it's a denial thing. I am denying myself these products. So go in as an enhancing your own life.
I don't want for an animal to have suffered for me to eat food. And there's plenty of evidence out there to say that I am eating a healthy, nutritional diet by eating plants. And actually I saw something recently which I thought was quite interesting. Somebody said, instead of, you know, you think you might miss food, certain things, like I thought I'd miss eggs, but instead of looking at things that you're going to miss, it's to look at what you're gaining. For me, I've gained an abundance of energy. You feel lighter in yourself, and you become ethically aware then as well, conscious, more conscious of the environment and the impact of eating dairy foods or products can have on the environment. So you become, consciously aware.
Next on the cards for Ger Prendergast is a triple-decker Ironman. An Ironman every day for 30 days. Training runs of up to 100 kilometers are fueled by homemade energy balls and nutrient-packed smoothies.
Energy balls. So that they have cashews, walnuts, sesame seed, pumpkin seed, chia seed, flax seed. What else have I got in there? Cacao, coconut oil, processor. Make little balls and stick them in the fridge. They're absolutely amazing. Gorgeous. But good salt, a bit of salt in there as well. Great man for the road. You're close, you see?
Yep.
Okay.
For me, I'd be very wary of buying packaged vegan foods. Sure, like things like Oreos and you know, Pringles and stuff are now, you know, they're vegan products, but there's a lot of stuff like that that are calling themselves vegan just to be classed as being like almost like a health type food, and they're anything but, you know, highly processed foods. So if I was giving any advice to people looking to go vegan for health reasons, I'd be telling them to be fairly wary of that, like, and stick to more the fruit and veg oil.
I got the Finding Ultra book by Rich Roll, and the whole story of his sort of search for sobriety and then sort of into a plant-based diet, and how that didn't just change his sporting life, but literally changed his whole life on how that worked. And that was pretty inspiring. And and I suppose, I think from my perspective, what was inspiring about that was he was 40 when he embarked on it. So I was coming at this as a 50-year-old guy who was, you know, trying to perform as a 25-year-old athlete would. And I think he showed that you could actually do that.
I don't think that I will ever go back to eating meat. It's been a fantastic choice. I wish I had done it earlier. And I mean, I think if you are an athlete today and you're not plant-based, you're missing out on performance gains that you could have. And also long-term health benefits. So I think that there is no reason for most people to eat meat, but especially athletes. I mean, if you're eating meat, you're behind.